Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler. I'm a serial entrepreneur investor, been involved in 17 startups and several unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD, Get Shit Done Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in Silicon Valley. With that, I have an incredible guest today, Terrell Jones. Terry, he's a speaker. He's an author of Disruption, a founder of Travelocity, founding chairman of Kayak, and he lives in Incline Village in Nevada. He loves to build companies. He was with American Airlines, and his CV is one of the longest I've ever seen, from everything from Earthlink and La Quinta, where he's been a director, Reardon, Airtegrita, Kayak, Luxury Link, etc. Wealth of knowledge. And with that, I'd like to bring Terry Jones on board. Hi, Terry. How are you doing today?
Hey, good morning, Gary. Great to see you.
So I got a question for you. How in the world, when you got started, so you were with American Airlines, how in the world did you come up with these ideas as Travelocity and Kayak? Did you one day you just woke up and say, I'm going to change the world?
No, it doesn't happen that way. It's always incremental. You always add on to something that was there. Very, very rarely do you just create something that is totally revolutionary. At American, one of our tasks was to automate travel agents. We had about 40,000 travel agents around the world with our computer system, and I was CIO. And some years before that, my boss, the previous CIO, had said, this new thing is coming online and we should try to make an online reservation system. And we put it on CompuServe and Prodigy, those early networks, and AOL. And you could make a reservation, but you couldn't buy a ticket. You had to get the ticket from the travel agent. And then eventually, after about 8 or 9 years of running this little thing, the travel agents woke up and said, hey, you're selling bullets to the enemy. You should shut that down. Eventually, that's going to kill us. And luckily, the chairman said, no, give it to Jones. He used to be a travel agent. Now he's over, in IT, and we'll kind of hide it over there. So when I took it over, the first thing I said is, why isn't this on the internet? It was 1996. The internet had just been deregulated. So we put it on the internet. We allowed people to buy tickets. Eventually, we became a travel agency ourselves. And that's a story that's in my first book called On Innovation. Because we directly competed with our channel, and most companies don't do that. But he was a backer and took the risk. And eventually I said, I don't want to be CIO anymore. I just want to go run this thing. And
so tell me about it. So Travelocity came out of American Airlines?
Inside American Airlines. So it's
I didn't know that. So the story is Travelocity came out, and how was it building a innovative company inside of, I don't want to say a dinosaur, but a large company?
And you're absolutely right. It's so different than Kayak, for example, which was a traditional VC-backed startup. It wasn't hard to get money, but I had to fight against purchasing and legal and IT and all these other departments. I eventually moved everybody out of the building so we could build our own culture. I extracted them from their departments because they kept having to go back to staff meetings. I said, look, this is about Travelocity, not about your marketing department. Our budget was held by the CEO, and that was important because everybody wanted our money. Of course, we were losing money. They could make money right away. We didn't make money for a while, but eventually we went public for $1.2 billion. So wow. It was about culture. It was about location. It was about building a team. And also, it was really hard for me to hire people from the outside because big companies don't do that. It took me a long time to beat them into that. And they said, well, you already have great people here. And I said, yeah, but I need different people. So those were kind of key. And that's one of the reasons I became a speaker. A lot of people want to understand, big companies, how they can innovate internally. Big companies have things that startups would kill for. They have capital, they have brand, they have a sales force, they have distribution, but they also are dinosaurs, as you suggest. So it's hard.
But how do you do it? Because I know, I've tried to do it several times and have done it, but how do you go down through, and, I know when you have meetings to have meetings, you start to get in trouble, right? You start to have a meeting about a meeting about a meeting, and then you got politics and people are saying nonsense things that don't mean anything just to show they're politically in. But how do you turn it into the skunk works kind of operation? So one is you isolated yourself away from American Airlines, door number one. Then how does it go? Because compensation in American Airlines has to be a lot different than doing a startup that's worth
Well,
$1 billion.
that was tough. And so I had a lot of scrappy people who just wanted to do something different. Eventually, we got them stock options. When we were going public, the board of American wasn't going to give everybody options. I said, you're crazy. We're competing against Expedia and Priceline. But it was a battle. Most of my job was, beating the drum about Travelocity and beating everybody else away with a stick. It's tough. I met the guy at Valero Oil who runs their recovery program. They recover oil and grease from companies and turn it into oil. Everybody hated him because they said his oil doesn't come out of the ground. It's the most profitable division in Valero, but it took him about 5 years to.
Wow, that's amazing. And but when you go down through it, were there a lot of politics involved in trying to get options for your folks? I mean,
there's tons of politics. I mean, I remember sitting down with the chairman of Sears, who was on our board of directors at American Airlines, and saying, we have to do that. He said, yeah, but it's all different. And I said, look, we're going to be a public company. You're going to own 70% of us, but we have to run it as a public company. And, the funny thing is that I ran it as a public company for several years, and eventually they decided to buy it back. They decided it was too important for their future. When they bought it back, they took it apart and they put sales with sales and marketing with marketing and IT with IT. And
oh my God.
About 4 or 5 years later, they sold it to Expedia for $280 million. So they took a $1.2 billion company and blew $1 billion by taking it apart. And that's just, corporate politics to the nth degree. Now, there's another way to do it. The woman who ran internet at REI, Recreational Equipment, told me once, said, in the beginning, we had an e-commerce division. And we sort of kept it in the greenhouse and we nurtured it. But eventually, when it grew up, we blew that away. We turned the org chart on its side and poured the internet in and made everybody responsible for the internet. Now, that's another way to do it. And it worked for them because now e-commerce is in every facet of retail. But you can make mistakes, and look at how many times Walmart has tried to do IT well. They should have been Amazon, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, but
Yahoo should have been Google. I mean, it's hard to change your stripes.
No, I agree. And so, when do you know, Terry, that it's a time to go? When are you in a company like that, and you say, it's time to leave? It's like, I can't do anymore. It's time to. Is it after the options vest, or what?
Well, obviously, if you're gonna make some money, I left because when they wanted to take over Travelocity and they weren't gonna pay us out, and I said,
really?
Look, if you don't pay us out, then everybody's gonna leave. They had double triggers, and they could all leave and get their options. And my CEO at the time of SABRE said, no, they have to leave to get paid. We don't want them to be here and be rich. And I said, you're crazy. You don't even know where the gas pedal is for this company. So the whole management team.
They said they want to be here and be rich. They said that?
Yeah, they did. They said, the SABRE people won't like it. And I said, the SABRE people didn't create $1 billion worth of value. So the whole management team, except for one or two, left. And that, of course, contributed to its demise. So corporate politics play a big role. Tone at the top is super important. I gave a speech once to an insurance company. We spent a day on innovation with their top people. The chairman walked in at the end of the meeting. He hadn't been in the whole thing. And he said, look, I don't want you running around with your hair on fire. Just innovate about this one thing. Well, the air went out of the room, right? It was over. Everybody had been real excited because you can innovate in accounting. You can innovate in any department.
Yeah,
but
right.
He didn't support that. He said, look, we're just going to focus on this one little thing. And of course, insurance companies are notoriously conservative. So it is hard. And that's why I work with CEOs so much on innovation and disruption to convince them they have the tools. They have everything, as I said, a startup wants. They just have to have the will to change, and that's hard.
No, I agree with you. And so, you went off, and what made you decide to do kayak? When did you start kayak, and were you thinking about it for a long time?
It's an interesting story. After Travelocity, I was doing a bunch of things. I was a speaker and I was doing consulting. And then I was working for General Catalyst Partners in Boston, the VC firm, as kind of an EIR. And we were looking at various travel companies. And we saw one that was doing comparison shopping. Right, you'd search on Travelocity, they'd give you 5 other results. We said that's kind of interesting, and we decided we didn't want to buy that company because we didn't like their tech and their team at the time. But Joel Cutler, the great VC there, said, I'll fund this thing. So we went out and found a great CEO and a great CTO, because Travelocity, Expedia, and Orbitz were closing about 5% of arrivals, which isn't kind of normal e-commerce rate.
Mm-hmm.
Where did all the other people go? Well, the other people were buying direct. So we said, why don't we build something where we search everything and you can buy direct? And that was the germ behind Kayak. Now, it's a funny story, because we went to the airlines and we said, look, this is better than Google search. We're not going to take them to the first page of your website. We're going to deliver to them the last page of your website. All they have to do is put in their credit card and buy. They've already shopped on our site. They said, that sounds awesome. Conversion rates will be good, but we're not going to pay you. We don't want to create another intermediary. So most of the airlines in the beginning didn't pay. But luckily, Joel and the team at General Catalyst and our other investors, Mike Moritz at Sequoia, said, just keep going. So we did, and we built a lot of volume, and one day we turned it off.
Wow.
And the airlines called and said, well, where'd the traffic go? And we said, same place your money did, dude. Nowhere. And they paid. So I don't know if we're the first inventors of ransomware, but it worked.
Wow. And so
it's a great quote that said, the game is over if the startup gets the distribution before the incumbent gets the innovation.
So how did you go down through, Terry, with Kayak? So did you get funded? What was the journey like to go? Well, we
got funded because it was incubated inside this VC firm. So
I got it.
And that's rare. That's very rare. So they did the seed, and then we got some other great investors. As I mentioned, Sequoia and several others came in. They loved the idea, and it grew like a weed. We had a terrific CTO who hired a superior team. He would go anywhere in the world to hire A players, and A players are so much more productive than others. And
well, how much of a difference, Terry, between a B player and an A player? Because I don't think the audience understands how much of a dent that makes.
It makes a huge difference. This guy would go anywhere in the world to hire an engineer, and the last question he would ask that engineer when he hired him was, "Who's the smartest person you know?" And then go talk to them. And he didn't convince them to join the company because of options. It was because they wanted to win the World Series. They wanted to build an amazing firm together, and they did. I mean, we went public with only 200 people.
Oh my God, that's amazing! How did you do?
We did great. The stock did well, and quickly thereafter, Booking.com came and scooped us up for $1.8 billion. They'd been sniffing around, but we couldn't agree on price. So once you're public, it's easier to agree on price. And they worked extremely hard to make Kayak very thin layer and very fast. And the faster your system is, the more you sell. I mean, people are in a hurry, particularly around flights. And some people got it and they realized they could click through and buy. Other people just use this as a search engine. Mobile came out, and we had one of the most successful mobile apps. Well, certainly one of the most successful mobile app in travel at the time. Made a huge difference, and now most travel is booked through mobile. And now travel is changing. A lot of the inspiration is coming from Instagram, and people are buying differently and being inspired differently. So people forget travel is the biggest part of e-commerce. It's bigger than electronics, books, and fashion combined. It's a massive market, and it's mostly online.
I didn't realize that. How did it feel, Terry, when you found out that the Booking.com was going to buy the company? How did
Well, that
you?
was wonderfully exciting, and you know, I think we had a great series of VCs who were willing to hang out and grow the company. It was about 7 or 8 years in, which is fairly typical for a sale.
Yeah.
And you know, we were excited to bought by them, and they wanted to and have left kayak alone. So they really haven't changed it. You know, if you look at Expedia, they bought Travelocity and Orbitz and Hotels.com, and they rolled them together and gave them the same front end and back end as Expedia. So there really is no difference.
Yeah.
And there's no brand value there. It's a house of brands, but not really. Whereas Priceline's been interesting. You know, they own OpenTable. OpenTable hasn't changed much. They certainly are using their economy of scale, but they didn't change the customer-facing portion. So it was a good sale. The CEO stayed. He's still there. He's also running OpenTable.
Wow.
And Booking.com is worth a gajillion dollars. You know, they've done very, very well.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. So you were the chairman, correct? So at Kayak.
Yeah, I was the chairman, and that was a fun role. You know, I've served on 20 boards of directors now, startups and public companies both, and learned an awful lot from doing that. Now I do a lot of advisory work with startups. I'm still on several boards, but I do more advisory work now, and it's great fun. I'm working with a travel company now, Copilot, that's just putting ChatGPT into airline booking. We should announce it publicly shortly. It's very exciting. I had an AI company for 5 years after Kayak started. I got a call from the chairman of IBM who said, "Would you come and teach IBM Watson about travel?" That resulted in a startup that was simply too early. We were doing basically what ChatGPT does today in terms of we changed the front end so you can use natural language. You could say, "I want to go to the Caribbean in February, have golf in a great spot. Where should I go?" And it would come up with the flights and everything. And we analyzed the pictures and we analyzed the reviews. But people are conservative. IT departments didn't want to change. We eventually ran out of money in that's one of my 5 startups, the one that failed. And today I think it'll work. I think today people get it, that people want to use voice and they want to use text. And if they do use that, you can understand their intent so much better than from a box that says what city and what day.
It's interesting, because when I think of Priceline, I think of William Shatner all the time.
Sure.
How in the hell did they get William Shatner to do that? What is the deal?
They gave a whole load of stock. It was very early, and the guy who founded Priceline somehow made a relationship there and gave him a lot of stock, and he made an awful lot of money from Priceline. It's interesting in marketing. You say Priceline, William Shatner.
Right.
If you say Expedia, what do you say? Nothing.
Nothing.
If you say Travelocity, people say the roaming gnome, which is good, but the roaming gnome didn't stand for much. William Shatner stood for low price.
Well, he stands for travel, right? I'm in a whole different way.
But Priceline was about low price, and people got it. So if you're going to have a mascot, it ought to stand for something. My dad was a madman. He did the Marlboro Man, the Friendly Skies United. Brand values are important, but they have to stand for something. I never understood the Marshmallow Man. What did he stand for?
And it was interesting because I always thought that girl that played with Shatner on Priceline was his daughter. Yeah, I don't know who that. I don't know, but I know him.
Well, when the guys came in to get a name for Kayak, we were just called the search company, and they said we want to call it Kayak, and we said, well, what does that have to do with anything? And they said, well, it's a strong name. It's a palindrome. You can spell it forwards or backwards. It's available. And one of the VCs said, if you name it that, I'm pulling out. But they named it that. They named it that, and it worked. There weren't any travel names left, so we named it Kayak.
Wow, that's great. And so as you're going on the journey through Kayak, what were the lessons that you learned, Terry? You've been through this a number 5 times, right? What are lessons that for all the entrepreneurs who are out there around the world, what do you think is the most important? If you say three different.
Well, I think that, look, one, if you're leading the company, you're always selling. You're selling the product, you're selling yourself, and you're selling the company because you're always raising money. And, how do you balance those things? And it's tough. It's tough to get that balance in, but you've got to be that kind of extroverted personality that can always be selling. Secondly, I think you have to really focus on hiring great people. Don't hire your best friend, hire the best person. And be pretty brutal if it doesn't work out. Because
what do you mean by that? Be pretty brutal.
Well, if it doesn't work out, they got to go. You got to get somebody else. Gary, you know this. People, startups, so many times I'll see a deck and they kind of put the team at the back. But I'm investing in the team as much as the idea, because the idea you have when you start isn't what's going to be the end. It's going to morph and change like crazy.
Yeah, and so
I'm investing in the people. I think that's really critical. And then, doing what Paul English did at Kayak and really having A players on the tech team is so important. Now what's great today is I look at so many decks and they outsource a great deal of their tech. And that's fine as long as you have the key team, the brilliant leaders who really understand what the tech stack is and put it together in a new way. I mean, the difference between building Travelocity with stone tools and we had 3,000 people. Now, a lot of those were in customer service, but everybody outsources customer service today, and then building Kayak, we did it with 200 people. Now you get great startups that, have 5 people in a credit card and they can build something amazing. So the tools are different. But I think the lessons are the same. You're always selling. And you really have to be careful to build a suite of technology and business model that runs together in a very powerful new way, and that'll get you the win.
So, as you're going down through this journey, the situation with Kayak, Travelocity, as you're going down through the journey, what drives you? What drives you to do the next one?
I'm just curious. I think curiosity is a great trait for entrepreneurs. I'm always reading. I studied history in college, so I was looking at the past. I ended up becoming a travel agent, of all things. I spent a year with 2 guys going around the world. I thought I was going to Vietnam, and I got rejected because of my eyes, which was wonderful. And we spent a year going around the world. That was a great course. I came back, became a travel agent. We started this company. It became the 50th largest travel agent in the world. We computerized it, and I got interested in computing, so I jumped to a computer startup that was selling mini computers to travel agents back when mini computers were a thing. And we sold that company to American Airlines. Suddenly I was inside the big beast, right? I ran that division. And then one day my boss said, I want you to go run 500 engineers. I said, I don't know anything about that. He said, oh, you'll do fine. So I ran 500 engineers out of the 1,500 working on mainframes. 2 years later, he said, I want you to go run operations. Well, it's one of the biggest computer systems in the world. We ran 40 airlines. I had 2,000 people, a $400 million budget. I said, I don't know anything about it. He said, go do that. And so, but in each time I had to go learn all these new things. We had private networks, and suddenly we had X.25, and along came the internet, and then Travelocity happened, and that was a lot more fun than running a mainframe. And I lost my hair running the American Airlines system, as you might imagine. I'm here today in Phoenix because of a flight delay, so they still happen. And I'm still at it. I mean, I'm all over this new company I'm working with ChatGPT. I'm working with another great company, Amgen, that where you can send an email and create a book. So you send an email in to your corporate travel department and say, I want to go to New York on Thursday, stay at the Hilton, come back on Friday afternoon. Boom. It just comes back with 3 options and you click. No more searching, no more fooling around. It's just done.
Oh my God, that's great. And so, do the island or do the airlines, have they gone down through and adapted? Have they changed a lot since you started? Because I know the service and everything. I don't mean in terms of service, but
no, in terms of IT. Well, of course, they've changed dramatically in terms of most of their business comes through the internet and through mobile devices. but they certainly haven't led the change. They're pretty much followers. They followed the online travel guys. They got together, several of them, and formed this company called Orbitz. They owned an online travel agency where they had the lowest price themselves. It was blatantly antitrust, but I couldn't get anybody to shut it down. I even went and saw the President Clinton, but they said, "No, it's airlines. We'll leave them alone." So eventually they sold that. So they haven't led, but certainly their business, their distribution has totally changed. I mean, half the travel agents in the United States are out of business. Airlines don't pay commissions to travel agents anymore. You might be surprised that there's still 20,000 travel agents around.
How do they make their money, Terry? If they
make their money from hotels and cruises and tours. Of all things, my daughter became a travel agent. She was going to be an opera singer and lost her voice, her singing voice, to Lyme disease, and decided to become a travel agent. Now she owns her own company. And she makes a good living because people, if you're going to spend $500 to go to Vegas, you don't need help. You're going to spend $10,000 to go to Africa, you might need help. And people still want advice. Now, it's going to be interesting to see as AI improves and it begins to give real advice, what happens. But I'm excited. Both my kids are entrepreneurs. My son had his own company for a while. Now he works for a division of Microsoft running a $300 million game creation. They're building a huge video game. So,
wow, you got to be proud of them.
I'm very proud that they're both entrepreneurs. That's been cool. He was an entrepreneur. He sold his company, but now he's inside of Microsoft, and she's got her own business. And so maybe a little bit of my DNA rubbed off. We'll see. But I'm a speaker. I'm an author. I've got these 2 books on innovation and disruption off. Disruption off is about all these 10 new technologies coming and how they can disrupt your business and what to do about it, for large corporations. Or you can read it as a startup and say, how can I use those technologies as a weapon to disrupt others? So I'm still doing that. I'm doing boards and advisory work. And I guess later today I'll be doing shoveling since I live in Tahoe, which is totally buried in snow.
I don't know if you're going to be able to get up there. You're going to have
I don't know. Today is going to be brutal.
Brutal.
Exactly. We've got the snow in my driveway is not snow, it's cement because it's been raining. So it's going to be tough. But we live up there on purpose. So
what a beautiful place to be. Terry, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I know you got a flight. Closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you?
Well, my website is tbjones.com. T as in Tom, B as in Brian, Jones.com. And you can get a hold of me through the website. If you want me to be a speaker, there are lots of videos there. You can watch how I speak. It's an unusual form and been very popular. Worked for me for the last 20 years. I love to help people. I love to mentor them and help them with good ideas. So as you and I have worked together, I love GSD and the stuff you guys are doing. You do the same thing. You've got your incubator and you're helping people all the time and giving back. And at this stage of my life, that's what I like to do. So I'm happy to be in contact with folks.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking the time, Terry, out of your busy schedule. I know you're tied up a lot. We really appreciate it. And thanks to my audience out there for joining one more time. GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the host. Stay tuned for another exciting edition coming up Thursday. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you soon. Thanks, Terry. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Gary.
Take care. Bye-bye.